And welcome back to our next episode of Unmissed Connections. We've got Lauren, our CMO, here back in the studio, and we're very lucky because we have Daniel Gogler, the CMO of PFL out in Montana. Daniel, you've been with the company for like 14 years, right? Can you tell us a little bit about PFL?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me, Chris and Lauren. I really appreciate it. 14 years. Nobody spends that long in a career at one company in marketing, right? Little unknown fact, PFL, printingforless.com was the first e-commerce commercial printing company. And so we were the first people to sell business cards, brochures, and the like online. What we found throughout the years as we were trying to help fulfill our mission of helping customers be successful as they define it, is that we could couple technology and what we were doing with our print and manufacturing and fulfillment capabilities. And so that led to the second category, which we're proud to stand up, which is tactile marketing automation, which is enabling marketers to use their systems they already use, from Salesforce to the marketing automation platforms, to deliver a highly relevant tactile experience that has very high impact via direct mail. And it's just yielding incredible results. And so it's been a really fun journey here at PFL. I've got to learn and market to a lot of different audiences over the years.
Today, what we're here to talk about, though, is account-based marketing, really focusing your marketing tactics on the entire account versus just the individuals that you're going after, your contacts, your leads. And it's really taking a good holistic view to every one of those targets that you're going after. So, Daniel, one of the first questions I do want to ask is, how do you see ABM changing nurture campaigns and nurture programs?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we see changing is just the alignment and focus around who do we really sell to. Digital marketing really started to focus on the individual, the lead, in the early 2000s particularly, and so we're coming back to that concept of it's not just about the individual, it's about the overall buying group, it's the company that we actually have the relationships with too, not just the individual. And so you see it changing as people try to understand what are the relationships, right? And the reason it's coming back, the digital technology had a hard time keeping track of relationships. Salespeople, humans, we're pretty good at understanding how relationships work. And so now we're having to push the technology to help us understand what accounts are and what are the relationships within that account. And so that's one of the biggest changes we see, is just people really trying to understand the relationship and the relational data that they have in their CRMs and marketing platforms.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of it, right, as well as now that we've kind of identified the buying groups and we realize there's different people we have to have all these conversations with in terms of what the nurture program looks like, things are actually really exploding now in terms of the channels that you can leverage to use those people. We're talking with Serious Decisions on the webinar this week, and I think one of the interesting things you see is they showed the slide, which is the traditional nurture program as we used to think of it, and it's a series of emails, right? And now today you can leverage, person or company-based advertising and really target into those people. Email as a channel continues, intent-based information, and then obviously direct mail to really try and get through and connect with individuals.
And so, looking at account-based marketing now, again, you're not focusing again on that contact, but you've really got to figure out who your target is. Now you're targeting a company. How many employees are in that company? How many employees work in those departments that your solution works for? How do you actually hone in or define that target market you're supposed to address?
At PFL, one of the things that we do is also to try to understand what that organization looks like, right? So we do it. You can do it by titles, by tenure at the company. Do they have a mature marketing stack based on not just their technology, but by resume, by who these people are as individuals, and the accumulation of skills in that organization to help identify someone who's really is ready to adopt and to look at our solutions or our customer solutions.
That piece of identifying the who is super important. I've heard our director of business development saying many times, you can get your pitch perfect, but if you're continuously giving it to the wrong person, it's really never going to get you anywhere. And I think that's one of the nice things that's come about in terms of ABM is it really helps you focus. Time Trade leveraged it for us. Anybody who is in a business that meets with their customers could potentially be a fit for Time Trade. So for us, it was like, really, how do we focus our time to go after the people that have the most pressing need? And that's what account-based marketing really helped us do.
No, you're right. And it adds a lot of work. And this kind of blends into the next question and topic we're going to go through. But at that point, how do you build out the type of content you're going? There's a lot of personas, there's a lot of people. Like, how do you actually put together that content structure to figure out who in that account should be receiving what?
Personalization is really interesting because it's came so far, and so many people still think of personalization of your content or your message as dear first name, or maybe I plug in some firmographic type things in there, or maybe your title, right? And that makes it personalized. But the other component, which is different as we come back into making this marketing a little more human, and the same thing that salespeople were good at identifying or still are good at identifying the relationships, and technology has not been able to, is we need to use the technology to have a conversation. Personalization can be way more than just I have to replace this text field with this value, and it can be, hey, I understand that someone is interested in account-based marketing because they attended my account-based marketing webinar, or they downloaded this piece of content. As B2B marketers, we can use those behavioral clues to personalize the content for that person. And to get to your point, like on the personas, what we find with us, where we're really clear on the areas that we sell to, there's different things they care about in terms of the individual vision metric and why they want it, but overall the organization needs are still largely the same.
I would agree, and I think that's one of the things when you do personas, it can sometimes be overwhelming if you're like, I have all these industry verticals and all these different titles. But really, I think when you do personas effectively, it comes down to like the common interests and pain points. So looking at overlap and ways that you can combine that, so it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to come up with 1,000 different streams or content pieces. It's finding the similarities despite maybe differences in those areas.
And you know what? That kind of brings us into really what our next question is. We'll make it the final of this video. We're going to cut this into 2 parts. It's what are the core components to a successful ABM campaign?
I think it goes back to some of the old school basics of marketing, really identifying the who are our ideal customers, who are those individuals, and then what do we need to know about them to have a value proposition that matters. The one thing with digital marketing, which I love digital marketing, but because of the cost, and email marketing a lot of times is perceived as free because we don't have to pay to send per email. But what that allowed marketers to do is to broadcast more messages and fill up our inboxes with a lot of noise. The core thing is really understanding who our audience is and what is the value proposition and why do they care to hear from us. They want a digital presence where they can research and understand more on their own without having to immediately talk to a salesperson. And so we have to utilize our digital channels, web, and then also are some of our push channels as well, from email and direct mail to really cut through and say, hey, we do understand you. And then, of course, the other component is we have to listen. And way too often that gets forgotten, but that's how we're going to learn and how we're going to have an effective conversation.
What are the things that we've put together in the programs we run that you feel are like the success makers of our account-based marketing programs?
I think for us, one of the major elements, I think we've talked about this on the show before, it's called account-based marketing, but really account-based marketing to me is kind of marketing thinking more like sales. And for us, I think one of the most critical elements when I look at the areas that we've been most successful, it's really around alignment with our sales and BDR team and making sure they are really well aware. We're all in agreement on the accounts and the people that we're going after and the key messages, and they know exactly what marketing is doing at all times. And when we're really working in sync, those are the programs that are really most effective because we're nurturing them from all angles. As Daniel mentioned, really breaking through the noise and finding ways to do that. And we have incorporated direct mail as an integral part of our ABM campaigns just because, with everything going on in terms of privacy laws and all of this, relying on digital channels alone is challenging to really show, I believe you are a great customer for us and we can make you successful and we have value to deliver and put something in there and break through the noise.
And so that really does sum us up to the end of this first part of this 2-part series. In the next part, we're actually going to talk about some of the creative ideas that were put together for these campaigns, some ideas you can follow, and just some of the success metrics and results that we've seen from running these account-based marketing strategies. So please go ahead and click around here somewhere. There's a link to another video. Thank you very much. So before we jump off this video, I do want to invite you to a webinar that Daniel and Lauren actually just recorded. I mean, what was it about?
Yeah, so we just recorded a session where we dive into this in a little bit more detail, talking about both the framework. So it's hosted with Serious Decisions. They'll talk about the framework for a modern nurture stream, and then we'll dive into some real life examples of how you can put those in place at your organization, what we're doing here.
There's a link in the description below for you to go ahead and watch this on demand right now.